Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'd like to give you guys the yearly update on my bamboo plants here. So in the last update all these plants were still in their pots. At the moment I've got two planted now in the ground. I've got my phyllostachys edulis, also known as Moso bamboo, on the right hand side here. I've also got my phyllostachys aureosulcata Spectabilis, which is known as yellow groove bamboo, on the left there. Those have both been put in the ground. I made a video update about them when I planted them. As you can see, there's actually some bamboo liner in the ground here. So that was quite a big job putting the bamboo liner in. Also on the left hand side, that's also contained, as they're both running bamboos, so they need containment. But if you want to see those previous updates, I'll put a link on the description so you can watch them. And then I've got my other bamboos which are currently in a pot. I'll give you guys an update on them. That's the Fargesia. These two have grown from seed previously. And I've also got my new plant, which is my Chusquea gigantea, which is this bamboo on the bottom here, which I've also done an update on recently. So I'll put a link in the description if you want an update on them. But the ones I'm going to talk about the most at the moment are my two phyllostachys bamboos here, because they're the ones that have grown the most since the last update. I'll also talk about all the other ones, as this is my yearly update on my bamboo. I'd like to show you all how they're doing. Starting with these two bamboos, as I say, they're both phyllostachys bamboos, so they're both in the hardy genus of phyllostachys, and they're both very tall, large growing plants. The one on the left here, the aureosulcata Spectabilis, that doesn't grow too tall, so I put that in that position there as the screen. It should be quite a bushy, dense plant, as it's already growing like that, but it shouldn't get too tall. The reason being, if you look up here, around about 8 to 10 meters in height, I've got my power lines coming in, and I think they're uninsulated power lines, so I definitely don't want anything touching them. So that's why that's at the back in that section over there. And on the right side here, we got the phyllostachys edulis, which is one of the giant timber bamboos, could get to 20-30 meters in the right climate. Unlikely here in Scotland, 8 to 10 max, but the position it's in, it's just going to be just to the side of the power line, so that should be fine in that position there. So I'll talk about my phyllostachys Spectabilis first. That's one on the left here, and this has grown a huge amount since the last update. What I will do now is just to show you how heavy it is with water at the moment. I'm going to dry it off with my leaf blower, and it should stand up and look a bit nicer. But the other morning we had a really heavy dew, and the canes were almost lying down on the ground. It was so heavy with the water. So these canes are still quite weak. It hasn't got to its real mature phase. When it gets to thicker canes, there'll be a bit more strength to them. But as you can see, they're a little bit floppy at the moment. So that's perked it up a little bit. You can see it's coming up a bit higher now. Some of the canes still lie very low, like this one on the bottom here. Basically, these are the original canes. They're a bit thinner than the other ones, and what's happened this year is those original canes have put on lots more leaves, and they've really kind of bushed out, and they got so heavy that they're starting to flop over. So I'll go back now to about a year ago to show you how much this has grown in the last growing season. It's quite phenomenal. So first of all, a bit further back than a year, this was one very small bamboo cane. It was only about a foot high. On this section here, it would probably be about that size. It is in there, but it's just so dense in the middle, I can't really show it. Then what happened is it shot up 3 new canes last summer. They got to a reasonable height, and one of them, I believe, is that one that's lying down on the side there, and the other one, I think, is this kind of one up the top, and there's one maybe going off to the side somewhere else. Those canes, it was in a pot the whole summer. It got really bad root mealybug, and it just really struggled because of the root mealybug, so it didn't really leaf out that well. I'll show you some photos from a year ago, and you'll see that it really was a bit low in leaf count. It was just really struggling. And then what happened is I left it outside all winter in the pot, because the root mealybug, they're not very good at surviving the winter. They're more of a houseplant pest. So my idea was let it get really cold, get the frost hitting the roots hard. That will really help kill off the root mealybug. And it did work, fortunately. There was no root mealybug this spring. But what it meant is it was in a pot. We had some of the worst storms on record here, 100-mile-an-hour winds, and it was just blowing the plant over. It basically was on the ground most of the winter. I kept putting it up, but then it would get blown over again by the storms. So it was rolling around on its side, wasn't upright, and it was getting hard frosts. And as you can see from the pictures of when I first planted this in this plot, only 3 canes, and there was very few leaves at all. It really wasn't looking good. So I was quite surprised at how well it suited this spring. I'll put some photos in as well so you can see the new shoots. Now mostly what you can see at the moment is from this spring's growth. It really put on a lot of good shoots. They got to about the height as the tallest ones last year, so although it didn't really get any more height, it bushed up massively. The existing canes put on loads more leaves, so although it didn't size up in height, already with diameter with the cane, it just really grew the plant well. And I wasn't too annoyed with that, because it was struggling so much last year, and it was struggling in a pot with root mealybug, and then having a tough winter. I was actually quite happy for it to grow as much as it did. And then it's done something similar to what it did last year. Last year it put up a lot of whip shoots from inside the pot, and they all got frosted off and to about half their height. They shot up lots of new side shoots this spring. That's what's given it all this density around the bottom there. It's all the lower down shoots. In fact, I can show you one down here. So you can see from that side shoot, it looks like I've cut the top off, but that was the frost that did that, and it just made it really bushy. So all the small whip shoots that came up last autumn just make it have a really bushy appearance towards the base, which has helped a lot with giving it the privacy. Now what's happening again this spring is you can see all these new shoots. There's several coming up here on the side. Actually they're taller than any other shoots last year, which is a really good indication as to how well this should do next spring, as whip shoots in autumn are nearly always smaller, if not always smaller than the shoots next spring. So to see that these whip shoots are getting bigger than this year's shoots is a really good indication that I should get some much thicker culms next year. Now I was hoping for this to start running because the bed starts around about here, it goes left, and this is about the halfway point, and it goes about another metre or two to the left further. And the idea is I don't really have much of a screen here. I've got neighbours' bins and all sorts of rubbish in the background. I want this as a nice dense screen, so I'm wanting this to run to the left. There's no signs of runners yet. Normally you would expect runners to be produced late summer into autumn, so I don't think this is running yet. But that's quite common in a colder climate, or when you have a young bamboo plant. If it's a running bamboo, it doesn't always run for the first few years until it gets well established, and then it'll start running and taking over. So hopefully that'll start running next autumn, start filling the bed more. But what I expect next spring is lots of much bigger canes to come up, probably twice the height as the existing ones, and hopefully we'll be getting around about this height up here. So probably around about the 4 metre mark would be good. At the moment it's probably about 1 metre 80, 160. It's quite small still. So it'll be interesting to see how that does next year. This is probably one of the hardiest plants I have. This is probably minus 20, no problem, minus 30 even. It should be alright, just about. So this is fully hardy. I don't worry about that with wind protection. When it comes to the looks of the bamboos, I think this will be the nicest looking. It's got that amazing green stripe on the canes, and you can also get zigzag canes as well. So be interesting to see how that does. It'll give a really nice, dense, bushy background to my border. So next I'd like to talk about my other bamboo, which is this one here, phyllostachys edulis. So this is the Moso bamboo. I've done a few updates on this previously. Now this as well was really suffering last autumn, which is why I was surprised at how well it's done this spring. And again, this is done quite late shooting. All this growth at the top here, this only appeared in the last few months. This is pretty much late summer shoots, and the rest of it appeared in the spring. So I'll go through the year now and how it's been. So around about this time last year, I don't think I've got many good photos of it, but basically there was just a few canes. The leaves were a bit tatty, they weren't looking too good, and it was quite a weak plant in general, a lot weaker than my other phyllostachys edulis. That one actually looked really lush at this time of year. This one is struggling a bit. But out of the two that I grew, this one has always had the slightly thicker canes, and a few of them, so I knew it would probably size up faster. Even though it was a slightly weaker grower, it did have thicker, stronger canes, just a lot less of them. So when I came to planting this in spring, it looked pretty awful. It had been through a whole winter, as I say, really strong winds. This, as it's in its juvenile phase, you can see it's got quite large leaves. Phyllostachys edulis is known for having small leaves, but because it's still in the juvenile phase, it's got these nice large leaves still. So it really isn't terribly good when it comes to wind, and it's not as cold resistant as the aureosulcata one that I just showed you. So it can maybe survive down to minus 20, but you'll start getting damage if it's windy or really cold for a long period of time. You get a lot of foliar burn on it. You can see a little bit of damage on the leaves already. And there's certainly a lot of damage if I pan up to the higher leaves, because we had about 60-70 mile an hour winds a few weeks ago. You can see those young leaves coming through have really been dried up and desiccated. The lower down ones were lower down, so they were protected from the wind a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how it does. Shouldn't lose as many leaves as last year because it was particularly bad, and I've got a shed just behind where I'm filming, which I made in spring, so that wasn't here last year. But as you can see from the photos, last autumn it wasn't looking great, and then in spring when I planted this, it looked really bad. It had very few leaves left on the plant. The canes were really floppy as well, that it couldn't hold their own weight up even though they didn't have a lot of leaves. And the reason for that is because they were grown indoors, not enough light, and so they didn't really thicken up a huge amount. That, and because they were also juvenile shoots, they were quite floppy. So come springtime, a very weak plant, and I was amazed at how many shoots came up. The biggest shoots it had last year, the ones in spring were the same size as them, even though they only had 2 or 3 of that size. But this time there was probably about 20 or 30 shoots I reckon came up, and one of them was really quite thick, very short still. You can see it was only about a foot high, maybe 2 foot, actually maybe more like 2 foot in height. But there was one that was quite good, nice and stocky, but it was just, it's still in the juvenile phase. And what I mean by that is it tends to fan out So I can show you this shoot here. The thickest one when it first came up with this one here. It's a nice diameter considering last year's shoots were these ones that have just died at the bottom here. They're very small. This has come up and it's really fanned out, so you can see it started branching quite low down, but very quickly it tapers and becomes quite a thin shoot. And if I pull this down and forwards, you can see there's lots of shoots coming out, and it has lots of shoots coming out from the main base, but each shoot is very long and it doesn't tend to branch. So this is really the juvenile growth. Also the leaves are particularly large, but I was quite happy with how thick that cane was, and as you can see there's probably about 20 or 30 canes came up, so it's looking really good. They were a bit sparse in leaves to begin with, but over the whole summer they grew more and more leaves, and it's now got this beautiful bushy appearance. It was looking really good. Then quite late in the season it started to shoot up some new shoots. I think there's about 4 or 5 in total, and they're these 6-foot ones. Now these are definitely looking much more like a mature phyllostachys bamboo. The leaves for a start are much smaller. To show you them in comparison there, much smaller leaf. Also the way it's growing is much more mature. So when I showed you these ones, what tends to happen is you get one main point at the top of the shoot like this. It grows quite thick just with leaves. This doesn't have that. This one has it fanning out right at the top, so there's not like a dominant leading shoot, whereas this one, as I say, fanned out lower down but then had a dominant leading shoot, whereas the mature one doesn't. Also with this, when I showed you all these shoots coming off the side, they don't branch themselves and they're quite thin. Whereas with the more mature one, you can see we have branches coming off the side, such as this here, but that branch coming off the side is branching itself. So, and you can see that with these as well, there's branches coming off the side branches, so there's definitely coming into a more mature phase. And the other thing that makes this different is, although the shoot isn't actually much thicker than that one I showed you further down, it doesn't really start branching until about 2 foot in height. It's got a clear stem and then it branches towards the top. So that's definitely a characteristic of a mature Moso bamboo, is if you look in a Moso grove, especially a really mature one, when you're walking around in the base of it, you don't see any leaves nearby apart from the ones on the ground, the ones that have fallen off the plant. It tends to be lots of clear stem, long bamboo canes that are clear, and then the foliage is held right up at 10 meters or more in height, and so you have a really clear bamboo cane. This is what this is going to get. So this at the base, it's not going to give good privacy, but it's going to give that height that I want. It's going to give a really nice backdrop to my garden. It's going to be giant thick canes. It'll be really interesting to see how that does. So I've been really happy with this. Considering how much it struggled, it really sized up well this year. And looking at how big these autumn shoots are, it's looking really good. Now these aren't whip shoots like it was with the other phyllostachys bamboo, so they are actually quite thick and strong, and they're much bigger than the spring shoots. But again, these are autumn shoots or late summer shoots, and normally late summer and autumn shoots, they're not as strong as would be in spring. Now most bamboos, once they get going, and when they're temperate bamboos like these, they don't shoot in the autumn or throughout the year. They tend to just shoot once in the spring. Both these bamboos are quite immature, so this one's definitely a young bamboo. This one isn't a particularly young bamboo, it's just from a small cutting though, so it's acting a little bit like it's a young bamboo and shooting throughout the year. So when this one stops shooting like that, what's going to happen is it's going to just shoot in spring. It's going to save up more of its energy over the summertime. Instead of just getting bushier and bushier, it's going to save it and then put up extra large shoots in springtime. So it'll be interesting to see how this does. The shoots next year should be at least as tall as these late summer ones. What I'm hoping for though is potentially double the height. So they're getting close to 2 meters at the moment. They're a good height. What could happen next spring is I could just get loads coming up again at 2 meters, but as bushy as they were in spring, so maybe getting 20 or 30 shoots at 2 meters in height, and this just becomes similar to what it looks like at the base, but just much bushier up top. Or what might happen is it might be starting to switch into the more mature phase, where it might grow less canes, but much bigger canes, and I might get twice the height, maybe even 3 or 4 times the height. I'm not too sure. But this has done really well this summer. We've had a really nice warm autumn as well, which has really helped it out. I've been giving it lots of water because it was quite a dry summer, lots of feed. That's why both of these bamboos have done so well. And it'll be interesting to see how they both do in spring, and I'll probably give you a spring update if they're quite spectacular in spring and we get a lot of upsizing. But I'm hoping the Moso will do well, and we'll just see how cold the winter is, if it gets defoliated or not. Hopefully it won't. And it's interesting to see how well this Moso has actually done, because Moso bamboo isn't supposed to grow very well in the UK. It can grow in the UK, but it takes a long time to get to a good size. But this one is already sizing up really quickly. And considering I'm in one of the coldest parts of the UK, I'm quite impressed with how well the growth has been. I put that down mainly to a slightly warmer than average summer, and just the amount of feed and water I've been giving it, and also putting it in a really sunny sheltered spot has certainly helped as well. So this is the one I'm most excited about. It's highly unusual to grow this far north. There's very few people growing this species of bamboo this far north, and it'll be interesting if I can get to a good size, because in the UK the biggest ones that I know of are right down in Cornwall, where it's warm and it's almost a warm temperate climate as opposed to a temperate climate. So the other bamboos I'll talk about are my two Fargesia plants. So that's these two here. As I said previously, these are grown from seed. They're both quite different though, so I'll show you them both individually just very quickly, just to show you the different characteristics. But before that, I'll just show you some photos from this time last year when I did the update, and you'll see they're much bushier. They're really sized up well this year. Now these are both Fargesia plants. They're not going to grow as quick as a running bamboo like the phyllostachys. They're also never going to get as tall, probably 3 meters max. These aren't very large bamboos. Now when it comes to the species, I don't actually know. I just collected the seeds that were from a flowering dying plant when I was working as a gardener. So it'll be interesting to see if I can try and get these identified. But they're both very different in characteristic. I don't know if they're different species because I thought I collected them from the same plant. But there was 2 plants I collected them from that year. I thought this only germinated from one, but maybe I actually had them from both. But they're certainly the one on the left, very small, many shoots, one on the right, a bit taller and less shoots. So I'll give you a closer up look at them now and show you how they look. So this is the smaller out of the two. As you can see, it's got loads and loads of stems. They're very small. They tend to be kind of a light green colour, and it's just not really upsizing much at all at the moment. It's staying very small, and it's just a really nice bushy dense plant. The only downside with this one is it is kind of partly deciduous. So a few weeks ago this was much bushier, loads more leaves. It's probably lost almost half its leaves, so you can actually start to see in slightly now. And what seems to be happening is some of the older growth from this is dying off, and so it seems to be thinning itself and just producing more shoots. So you can see here a lot of the smaller shoots on the outside have died off. It's been replaced by slightly thicker shoots, but again they are very thin, probably just 1 or 2 millimeters in diameter. So a really small bamboo. This will probably be good as a really dwarf bamboo if I wanted a really bushy small plant. And this is my other Fargesia plant. As you can see, it's much taller and the shoots are much more robust. Also the shoots have a much darker colour. They look quite a nice dark colour. They are green though once the bracts and the culms come off, but you can see they're a nice dark colour and they hold their culms for quite a while. This one is deciduous as well, not to the same extent. Now nearly all bamboos are evergreen, but you get some like these ones here which do lose a lot of their leaves in the autumn. This one hasn't lost as many as that other one I just showed you, but this one is starting to size up a bit better. You can see it's getting a bit of height. It's also not quite as bushy, and I can show you it's doing a similar thing where it's killing off some of the older shoots. You know, you've got some of the older ones here starting to die off, and instead of getting much wider now, what it seems to be doing is killing off some of its old shoots there, and it's starting to grow some of these much thicker shoots. So this one's definitely starting to upsize, become a more mature plant. It looks like this will have fewer shoots, it'll be a less bushy plant, but it'll be much larger canes. So that'll be good as a medium-sized bamboo. I'm not sure where I'm going to put these permanently, but what I do at the moment is I keep them in pots and I just use them at the front door as a bit of greenery in the winter when there's not much left that's still green. So this one I definitely prefer out of the two. I'm not really a fan of the really bushy small bamboos. I prefer the timber bamboos with the thick culms, but this is nice to have a clumping bamboo which has slightly thicker culms. Be interested to see how big this gets, but from memory the parent plant was about 3 meters tall, so I don't expect these to get huge. But being seed grown, there's going to be a lot of variability in the genetics, so I don't know what's going to come out of it. It could be bigger than that, it could be smaller than that in its final height. And then my last bamboo down here is my Chusquea gigantea. I've done a whole in-depth video on this, so I won't cover it too much in this video, but you can look at this link in the description if you want to see that. This is a very large clumping bamboo, the largest clumping bamboo you can get in a temperate location. So this can handle frost quite well. It's not as hardy as my phyllostachys bamboos, but I'm probably going to be growing this in my parents' garden in a coastal location where they don't get the really hard frosts. And another benefit of this is it's quite tolerant of being in a coastal location with strong winds and a bit of salt spray. So it should do quite well there. Another interesting feature of this is it has solid canes, so the canes are really quite strong. And this was a very small seedling. Not long ago, I just bought it early summer. It's really bushed up really nicely. It's starting to get some larger canes. Now this species went to seed a few years ago, so all the plants around the world flowered at once, then they all died, and so the plant was pretty much extinct apart from in the seeds. Then lots of seedlings have now come up, people are propagating them, and this will probably become a very popular plant in a few years' time when the nurseries start to sell the new plants. And so as with most bamboos, I don't know the flowering time, but it's normally between 50 and 100 years each bamboo species will flower, and then they all flower at once and then they all die at once. So it's quite rare to get one that's just flowered and get the seeds from it. So this is doing really well. As I say, it's upsizing. I'm really looking forward to how fast this might upsize, and the roots are looking really good. What tends to happen, I've noticed when I was repotting the edulis bamboo or the Moso bamboo, I've noticed that before they upsize, the roots get much bigger, and the roots on this are certainly getting much larger. So you can see in this plant here, we've got quite nice roots starting to come on it. If I rotate round, you can see we've got some much larger roots now. So all the roots originally were quite thin, like these ones here. We've got these much larger roots starting to come through. On this side in particular, we've got some really nice, large, healthy new roots coming through. So this will definitely upsize pretty well in spring. It's already growing much thicker canes, as you can see these ones here, than the thin canes that it had when I first got it. So it'll be interesting to see how that one does. It should really upsize nicely for me. It should grow well in my climate as well, as it's used to cooler conditions. And I'm really looking forward to that, as that has the most potential as a clumping bamboo, but still getting to a decent size. So that's it for this update on my bamboos. I'll hopefully see you guys in spring. It'll be interesting to see how much more they size up. The two Fargesias here, they don't particularly send up new shoots in spring, they just kind of send up new shoots throughout the whole summer, so the upsizing of them is a bit slower, you don't really notice it. But with the running bamboos on either side here, it's really springtime when they take off, and they'll get to the full height in a couple of months from shooting until full height. So I'll probably show you these ones in spring when the new growth is coming through, if it's looking like a particularly spectacular year. So that's all for now, and I'll see you guys in spring.